filtering.
It's nice.
It was what filtering, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put that on the list. No, it's good. On the video. So we're going to bring some data into ArcMap. And the reason I restarted the video is because this is not intuitive either. So let's go through it. Basically, this gives you, it always has this window that pops up, but you can ignore it. So we're just going to X out of that. The next thing to do, I think all of those computers should have these folders here. They should look similar, or it should say something with desktop at the end, and that will go to your desktop. So that's all the folders and files in your desktop. But if you don't have one, ArcMap is kind of weird, right? So you may have opened the software, and it may look like this, just blank screen, right? So you don't even have that little window I had on the right side. So if you don't have that, you got to open this catalog button here, and then if you don't have any of the folders under the folder connections folder, you right click on it, you say connect to folder, and then you tell it which folder you want to connect to. So usually there's under this PC, on mine at least, there's a desktop one. And if you guys don't have that, we'll go over it once we actually do this with you. This is just kind of like, I want to have this video in multiple places so you can go back, because this is like unnecessarily complicated, and you only have to do it like once, you know, and then you'll forget how to do it again and think of it. So anyway, this will be one place you can go to get this information again, because I guarantee you, you're going to have the question. And then if you just hit OK with the desktop highlighted, it'll just put it in your list over here. So it's not what I was originally intending to show you. I really just wanted to show you GIS data, but this is all a little bit of the stuff that goes into bringing it in. So then I have my GIS Fall 2018 class folder, and in the data folder I have a main GIS folder now. In the main GIS folder I have interestingly one file there, and when I looked at it here, there were 5 files, right? So one of the things to know, and the reason I introduced this basically in the first class, is that it's extremely confusing, right? Like, and it just will be confusing, right, for a while, right? Is that GIS shapefiles are going to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 different files that all equal 1. And when you look at it in ArcMap, it's only going to have 1. So we're all on the same page, right? So like that's we'll come back to this a few times in class. And then so what you can do is, if you got this file over here, you can drag it over here basically, and it will draw you some data, right? So just to recap, we went to website, clicked on a shapefile button, but then we actually clicked on a data download button. Brought us to another page where we download a shapefile. We made a folder and we unzipped it. And we put the zip into a folder that made sense. Then we unzipped it, and then we made it open up ArcMap, made a folder connection, and then we moved the data into this little window in ArcMap. Now we have GIS data collected off the internet. So a lot of things that aren't very obvious, right? So anyway, isn't that interesting, right? That's all the towns in Maine. It looks like just a map right here, but what we can do is I have a whole bunch of toolbars on, by the way, so like you're going to have a lot less on, I would imagine. The only one you really need to worry about in the beginning is this one, which is called the Tools toolbar. Right, so I can just, if I click on these three, if I click on the 3 little dots, I can move the toolbars around. See that, like 3 dots moved around, and it will like pull it off if I pull it down. Anyway, this is just to make it easier, so we can all look at just one simple toolbar. Very basically, you can zoom in on this if you click on this little wand with a plus. But,
I'm sorry, but how do you get like ortho imagery on here so you actually have like base maps as well?
oh man, we'll get there. That's a good question. Let me show you. There's obviously there's like 6 different answers. I'm trying to think of the easiest one. The best one for us right now. Oh, the best one for us right now is in fact this one. There is this other toolbar which is also important. The standard toolbar. These are your 2 main toolbars basically. I have a lot of other random stuff on here. And on this one you have a little plus button, which is add data, right? So this is another way you can add data besides the one that I showed you. But if you click on the little drop down button here next to the plus, it'll give you a couple options. And one of the options is add base map. Click on that. I'll give you some options here. And you can say imagery. Double click on it and it will pop some aerial imagery in below it. If you're used to Google Maps, it is not Google Maps, and it's not as easy. And one of the other suggestions I got from the kid, the guy that works for me now, that took this class, was to go into QGIS, which is an open source GIS program. Yeah, no, it's great. So the reason I teach ArcGIS is because that'll get you a job. QGIS is that will allow you to get in for free and do a lot of good stuff. ArcGIS is just a very it's more organized. It's easier to use in the ways that matter, which are like the background stuff, like databases. But we'll get there. Might not get there, but so interesting. Now we have GIS data on a map of northeastern North America, right? Pretty neat. And we were just going to zoom in on something, right? So give a little plus here. And we can zoom in on our area here. And you notice the background takes a little while to redraw. It's actually going out to the internet and saying, hey, give me more images. I gotta serve them up to this guy, making a map. Because when you zoom in, it becomes more detailed, right? So it's getting a whole new thing, new set. Where are we? I think it's this down here, actually. So again, it's getting a new set of images, and it takes us a second to reload. Again, that's why I say it's not Google Maps, right? Come on. There's another way to load these things. It's faster, that we'll get into at some point, but that is the easiest way to add them in. Great, so I think we're down here. Unless I'm way off here. Yeah, that's us. Okay. Great, so here's the campus. I'm going to turn this aerial imagery off just because it's like takes a while to load if it's on. And I turn the town boundaries back on, just so we can talk about like GIS data, right? So the thing that really makes GIS data is that it has this visual element, right? Of course. But it also has a regular database element. Now, what that means is basically there's an Excel table attached to this data. It's similar to an Excel table, right? It's just a table of data. It's just, I use Excel as an example because it's what most people are maybe familiar with, like a table with columns and rows of data, right? More there, but for now, that's the main thing that makes GIS data is the fact that it has like shapes and data. So one way we can look at the data is to right-click on this layer here. We call them layers, GIS data, data layers. We call them layers because they sit on top of each other, right? Literally. If there's a a school on top, like a outline of a school on top of a parcel, or like on top of a town boundary, whichever one's on top in this list is going to show up, right? So you can move them around in this list. And if you had a bunch of different things in there, they would all be kind of jammed in there in the order that you have them there. So they're layered on top of each other, so they become layers. So we can look at the table behind that if we right-click on it and we say Open Attribute Table. Attribute's a funny word. Attributes are the other things about the shape that you're seeing that you might want to know. It also just could mean the table of data that's associated with it. So if I open that table, you can see that there's a whole bunch of things that look like Excel, right? So there's, you know, if we look down here, we can see there's 8,500 different polygons, they call them, that is like in this file, which is surprising because there's not 8,000 towns in Maine, right? But the reason it is because there's 8,000 little islands off of Maine, right? So there's 8,000 little pieces of this polygon that are in this file. One thing we can do is, let's say we're looking for town in Biddeford. We can sort this town column by alphabetical. If we right-click on it, we say sort ascending, and we can go to the B's, and we can find Biddeford. There we go. And we can click on this little nub over here, and we can drag up until we get all of the pieces in Biddeford. So if we close it, we can see that everything that has Biddeford for a name is highlighted. Those shapes are associated with that row of data, right? So like, what else does the data have about it?
Looks like they had Cox cable in there, so.
Cox cable.
Yeah.
Spectrum.
Yeah, well, there's Spectrum and Cox.
So we're in here, and we only want to look at the stuff that's selected. We can click on this button here, and it will only show the stuff I just selected. These are the coast ones, right? That's interesting. Let's see what that means. If I highlight them again, it turns yellow, and it will change the outline of it on here. Oh, interesting, right? So the coast ones mean they're not actually land that it's covering, right? It's just a way to delineate how far out into the ocean Biddeford, you'd consider it to be Biddeford, right? And that's kind of probably arbitrary from the coastline, right? Like, I don't know, a couple miles maybe. But you can also see that if I go in closer, some of these islands are part of Biddeford, which I wouldn't have guessed, right? That's interesting, right? Because you wouldn't have known, but it seemed more, it seemed simpler when it was just a town boundary file. Now it's like, well, geez, we got to deal with like islands and water and like all this other stuff, which is the reason that website had a whole bunch of different ways to show town boundaries, right? So just to talk about some of the things here, you know. Do you have any other like just questions that like this point, like this is kind of like a typical.
For
Yeah.
these data sets, are you going to be? Isn't that one of the last things that he said was that you're going to grade us on what we put in the metadata?
Oh, I'm not gonna. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm gonna do that. I was thinking about it when I opened this that we might want to do the same thing and just grab some data, but I don't think we should do that. I think once we get data, like let's get it for a reason, and do it together. Like we could do it right now. It's not a bad idea. But anyway, let me think about that. So